Previously in episode 4.
The reserve is not an ordinary building.
It's definitely one of its kind. Never you can find another copy of it.
When you enter the reserve, it's going to be like discovering Atlantis for the first time.
We will have different layer of service, so it's an whole ecosystem. It's a very flexible facility that is all in one.
We're not here for the short term. We designed it this way to be there for the long term. I believe that this facility will set a standard against which other walls are going to be measured. It will be something that's truly innovative in the industry. So with the design finalized, we had the challenge of finding which companies will be able to create this design at a cost which was acceptable. And it made sense to split the project into two parts. The onyx facade was a very specialized requirement, and we started early with that because we knew it was going to take a long time to get approval, to get the panels tested, to pass Singapore regulations and so on. So it ended up being two companies which were bidding, and it was quite easy to select Jung Ho, which ended up being the company doing it, and they did a fantastic job. So August 2021, we managed to appoint the contractor who would actually do the facade, the onyx facade. And once that was completed, we started with the task of finding the main contractor for all the other parts of the building. And these projects are a lot of work. We had a team of about 10 people led by Wesley to create the design. And I remember as we were sending out these contracts, it was almost comical. We had boxes of contracts because all the specification had to be part of the contract and it had to be printed for signature. So it's a long process to get it started. By end of 2021, that process was well in place, and the contractors were basically reviewing the design and coming back with proposals. We had about 10 main contractors in the bidding. Along the way, we eliminated different main contractors, and we ended up with 3. Out of these 3, these all were quite highly regarded contractors which have been in the business for a long time, 40 years, 50 years. They've done many of the top hotels in Singapore. And the bid we ended up being around 45 million Singapore dollars. It was never really a matter of can we afford it, because we could almost pay for it in cash. It was much more a matter of how do we optimize this, and do we want to go back to the drawing board, or can we go with this price tag? And I think one of the realities is that we already got a very, very good price. We managed to really get a lot of the main contractors hungry to be in this project because it was something special. And we also, because of the cash flow difficulties in the industry, promised them payment within 2 days as opposed to 3 weeks. And so these are the kind of things and many others that sort of allowed us to negotiate good prices, and it made sense to go ahead with the $45 million.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I am currently the Head of Operations and Facilities for the Reserve. My scope of work basically covers the smooth operations in terms of business, building operations, and as well as security. I spent about 8 years in the military and 4 years in the private security sector. Construction projects, for this case like the Reserve, is never easy, especially for a project like the Reserve, where you have to re-image the entire building. It is a challenging task. A million things can go wrong, right? There are so many moving parts around.
You have the regulators, you have us as the owners of the project, you have our specialist contractors, which is the architect, the engineers, the QSs, which are the quantity surveyors, the quality inspectors, and all this group of people which are ultimately under our payroll. Then you have the main contractor, which we contracted with, which has also different subcontractors.
There is a lot of coordinations, a lot of planning, a lot of communications, and there are multiple parties involved. So it's a tall and challenging task.
So once we confirmed the main contractor, works were supposed to start around April or March, but the ramp up was really quite slow. And that was partially because of the lack of available workers overall.
Although we were approaching towards the end of COVID, people are allowed to return to work, but there are a lot of restrictions in terms of group sizes. For construction companies themselves, they too are feeling that entire crunch because a lot of the workers that were previously sent home during the COVID period, they were either not allowed to come back or they were not able to bring them back in time. So that actually caused a lot of delays because they do not have the sufficient manpower to deliver the project.
COVID had created a lot of headwinds for local construction companies, both in terms of cash flow and in the terms of a lot of the workers.
I also do recall the initial panic, right? When one of the office staff from the main contractor contracted COVID and everybody started panicking, and then we needed to get the cleaners to quickly come in, desanitize the entire area. We had to make sure that whoever was in contact, gets themselves isolated as well. So those kind of worry, I think that put a big impact on people back then, psychologically and physically on the ground. This, of course, further put constraints on the already small-sized manpower. And this overall basically signals maybe not a very smooth start, but I think eventually we managed to get through.
At that time, the European Union ended up with a very generous program of about $1 trillion or euros to subsidize renovation of buildings in Europe. And it was up to 110% of costs. And whenever bureaucrats decide on a program like this, it was very clear that before long, all the construction materials are going to go way up in price. And so we had to make sure with our early contracts that we locked in almost all of the steel, almost all of the aluminium, the glass, much of the stone, before we had that run up in prices. And so we avoided paying a premium that a lot of people had to do by locking in these things early. And so as we were navigating all of these challenges, it was sort of a matter of locking in and learning and optimizing these factors.
The main con took a while to gather their resources, their own workers. It also took a while for them to engage the subcontractors. And once work started moving, it almost seemed to me like they had not been able to commit themselves fully for some reasons. For example, on a typical day, my resident engineer and my resident technical officer, they will actually go on their rounds to inspect on the work from the contractors. And a lot of mistakes were actually found along the way.
Towards the middle of 2022, we noticed that we had more and more rework cases. In other words, if something was built which was not according to specification, or if something was built in the wrong place, then it had to be torn down and rebuilt. Obviously, it will delay issues. And these reworks got worse over time.
For us, we try and look on the positive side. We try to look at how we can try and alleviate the entire situation by being more forthcoming with the main contractors. We try to go in to help to boost the morale of our workers. If I do recall, this Chinese New Year, we actually went in to give out to all the workers, regardless whether they are from the main contractors or the subcontractors, cash money in red packets. Of course, we gave out Mandarin oranges as well. And that worked pretty well in our opinion, because we actually see a lot happier workers on site. The workers, they were trying to put their best foot forward.
I feel that the problem at the beginning of all of this was that we didn't have strong enough middle management or quality control from the main contractor side. The amount of delays as we moved along ended up itching from 30 days to 45 days to 50. But once you hit those close to 3 month state, you just know that this is becoming too big an issue to be able to recover from.
It was starting to get a little bit absurd. A 90 days delay is not acceptable to us, definitely.
And so we needed to really get confidence that the quality and the timing of the works would improve. And I had a number of meetings with our main contractor, and we made it clear to them that we want to set certain targets, which were set for January 2023. And if you can meet these targets, we can proceed. But if you do not meet these targets, you have to be prepared that we might have to exchange main contractor. And along the way, we supported the main contractor in a number of different ways. It was always a complicated legal thing, but we essentially looked at finding way to help pay for the subcontractors in a way which later on we find out many other companies in Singapore have also started doing. Because my goal was to always keep the project going despite issues. So January came and the goals were not achieved. And by that time I had also split the contract so that from a $45 million it went down to just a 24 million, with some of the other party subcontractors being moved out to reduce the scope. We essentially started making another tender to see that if we should have to change main contractors, we would have some options.
I think when it comes to toying with the idea of trying to look for a new main con, it's actually a painful process to us because there is a lot of complications in terms of contractual terms. To get another new main con, the biggest question is, would somebody want to come in midway and take over a pile of mistakes that has been previously committed by another party?
That's a lot of risk for the new main contractor coming in. They would also be in a position of strength because they know that we are in need of somebody coming in, and so they can usually ask for a higher price, which will then be something that inflates the cost of doing such a transition. On top of that, there are regulatory delays. Changing the main contractor is something that has to be approved. We have to essentially have some governmental sort of switchover process. But more importantly than that, you now have to create new contracts with all the subcontractors.
When the new main con comes in, they might want to use their own subcontractors, and so on and so forth. There are so many complications, processes, people, contracts.
It becomes a very complex thing, and the more time you waste, the more your costs go up.
We decided that we really need to cut short our pain and move on with somebody who can actually meet our eventual goals.
Informing a main contractor or anybody, that they're being let go is never an easy sort of thing to do. But we've been very forthright with them for many months. I told them 3 or 4 months before if you don't make these timelines, I might have to let you go. They didn't make the timelines. I informed them we are going to make a tender to look for a replacement.
To be fair to the main contractors, they actually poured in their higher management resources. The director himself even came down to try and supervise the work that is going on site. But unfortunately for them, things just didn't turn out right.
I think to some degree he knew that he was not able to deliver in the time frames and so on that we needed. Part of the reason was that the banking industry overall in Singapore at that time had become very bearish on construction companies because they saw that they're in cash flow problems. And so there are a lot of cases where main contractors had their credit lines pulled. And so that essentially made it a lot tougher for main contractor to really deliver.
We had an official meeting with them to announce this unfortunate parting with them.
When we informed them of it, it went surprisingly well. Having said that, a breakup is still a breakup, so you know, it's better than expected, but that doesn't make it a nice experience.
The day after we announced the decision, I do recall that the site was quiet. It was almost near a ghost town.
It was always what I wanted to avoid, is for construction to stop. It was a sad period because it felt a little bit like being ambushed in a situation, and when you're ambushed, the best thing is to charge forward. And so that's where, you know, I was trying to make sure that all governmental permits are being filled in time, so we don't forget anything, and that the main contractor is ready to start as soon as possible. And get as many of the subcontractor issues sort of solved as was feasible in that period. So even though there wasn't actual construction happening, there was a lot going on during that period in terms of new contracts being signed and so on and so on. Since the new contractor took over, we started having a very solid ramp up. The new main contractor is very professional.
Later on, of course, then they brought in the subcons. Then you started to see work moving. You started to see the facade being erected. It was amazing.
We've actually been seeing some pictures of the facility at night with the lights on, with the Onyx, and it looks almost exactly like the rendering at night. So it's quite amazing how we actually managed to build this thing. So the facade has done very good progress. Right now we are working on the lobby entrance, which is the rounded entrance, which is going to be ready soon as well.
The installation of the spiral staircase, it's costly, but it turned out beautiful.
We had an interesting exercise where the spiral staircase was installed. Because we're close to the airport, we needed a crane which is about 80 meters tall. And so we had a time between 1 o'clock at night to about 4:30 in the morning in which the spiral staircase had to be lifted in 4 pieces, moved through the skylight at the top of the building, come in, and then it had to be welded in place, all in one sort of period. And they did it all in 3 hours. In particular, the work being done on the main Silver Vault. It's very impressive. We have 2 lifting machine, and we have about 9 large pieces of machinery inside vault room right now, essentially setting up the GRSC panels and working on it on a very timely sort of way. So it's almost like a ballet which is happening.
I think overall, in terms of the experience with this new contractor, at least from the beginning when they came on board, it was a positive one. When they started coming on board, I think things were a lot smoother as compared to the previous.
Every week we have some key sort of advances happening now. Over the next 3 or 4 months, we should be able to finish So when you're building something in Singapore, there is a key milestone which is called TOP, for Temporary Occupancy Permit. And this essentially means that the government and all the governmental agencies are giving you approval for moving in.
I think TOP1 is going to be a very exciting phase for everyone, ourselves inclusive, because this basically means that the building is ready to be occupied. We are ready to take in business. We are ready to welcome visitors.
We might still have to do some small renovation works. There might still be some painting to be done, or really minor things that are non-structural and can be done quite quickly. So really TOP1 is the key milestones that we're working towards now. We expect to be able to pass TOP in December.
As we approach the end of the construction, pretty much a mixed feeling, because for me it will be a very big change of mindset. As of right now, I need to put on the hat of someone with a construction knowledge pushing the project as it is. But once it is completed, the aspects that I have to look at is entirely different. Now it's really about running of the building, running of the business operations. I need to get the people all trained up. The building technicians, the cleaners, the security, the concierge. I'm a little bit concerned, but of course excited as well. I look forward to the completion. That has been the day I have been waiting for.
Societies are becoming more polarized and fragile and fighting each other. These divisions are just going to be worse and worse. I think it's fundamentally important for somebody to provide a way of storing wealth which is secure from all these issues that are happening. I find that there's a lot of value in vertical integration. If we look at what Elon Musk has achieved, a lot of the savings, a lot of the efficiencies at Tesla, at SpaceX, they're coming from vertical integration and not relying on subcontractors. I find that the more connections we have, the more we're relying to somebody, a third party, the weaker we become as in terms of counterparty risk. So the idea of being fully vertically integrated, being your only counterparty where the buck stops with us, is the best way of reducing that counterparty risk because I can control it. Building the reserve means that we are no longer dependent on a landlord now. I own the facility. I can design the facility to optimize the safety of the items inside, the capacity, the efficiency, and all these other things. But if I'm renting from a landlord, he might kick me out. And maybe I would not find another good location, and it will just create a lot less certainty. That's, I think, what we owe to our clients who want to store the bullion for the long term. Because if I tell them your gold will be safe for your daughter to come and pick it up in 20 years, I want to do whatever I can to make that possible. And if I rent my facilities, or something else happens, well, that's not as good as owning and having built the facilities. And I think this is a big, big step for us towards that vision of providing the best systemic wealth protections that we can.